بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة والتسليم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم عن المصطفى الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما والحمد لله على كل حال. Some of the ulama they explain that one of the diseases of the heart, what can become a disease of the heart, right? Amrar al-qulub, is the inability to accept responsibility. The inability to accept blame. The inability to do correct muhasabah. All right? And so what I want to do today, inshallah, is I just want to reflect on the story of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam and see how this plays in, you know, the different tragedies that befell the people in his story. All right? So this is the ancient test. All right? This is the ancient test. If you remember when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Iblis to bow down to Adam alayhi salam, and he refused, did he accept responsibility for not refusing? Who did he blame? He blamed Allah. So this trait is a shaitanic trait. We don't talk about it much, but it's shaitanic. And you know, as our children are becoming adults, this is one of the conversations that we have to have with them. Right? Like, no, you have to bear the burden of the choices that you make. You have to take responsibility for the things that you do that are wrong, that are messed up. You have to take responsibility for that. All right? So what Shaitan said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, قَالَ رَبِّي بِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي, because you have led me astray. Who is he blaming? Because you have caused me to err. He's blaming Allah. Right? And so he tells Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what he's going to do. لَأُزَيِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَأَغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. Like, I'm going to waylay them on the earth. The human beings, because of what you did to me, this is what I'm going to do to them. Right? And I'm going to lead them astray all together. All right? The point here, he's blaming Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We live in a time, this time that we live is a time of, instant gratification. This is a time of shahawat. So in order to diagnose what we see sometimes, and I'm really talking about our youth. So because we live in a time of instant gratification, we live in a time of blame somebody else. Let somebody else take responsibility. Not me. Not me. Like, we have to call it out now. And I think probably because I'm a therapist, sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to say, no. You got to look in the mirror, man. Right? You really, really got to look in the mirror. All right? All right. So the question, as we're going through this, I just want everyone to be thinking about, can you declare your guilt? Because this is the first step towards tawbah. You have to be able to recognize that you did something wrong. That's the first step. If a person can't do that, how can they make tawbah? And if there's another person involved, how can you rectify the situation if you don't recognize that you did something wrong? How can you? Can you say I'm wrong? Can you say, yes, I erred, my bad, I did that, right? Can you say that? Or do you make excuses like shaitan? Okay? And another thing sometimes that we see is we only see what we did that's good. We only see our excellence. This is a characteristic of the nafs. Characteristic of the nafs, no, I'm like this. They are like this. Yeah, they might be like that, but for sure, the only reason why you recognize it is because you have some of it too. You have some of it too. All right? So this is the foundation of this story. So let's start with Zuleika. Zuleika. So Zuleika, as the ulama say in the tafsir, they say that she was the daughter of the kings of the west of Africa. Right? So this is like Morocco, Algeria, Morocco, the west. And in her time, she surpassed the women in beauty and grace. In like she was the baddest one in her area. She was the baddest one. And all of the suitors, they wanted her. All of the suitors. No, we want to marry Zuleika. There were poems about her. You know, like we have like Romeo and Juliet and all these different stories, you know, in Western literature. In their time, she was the subject of their literature. One day she has a dream that she saw someone and he captured her heart. In the dream, he was, wow, the one. And she lost interest in all of the other suitors. Because in the dream, she was told, he is your husband, and he is the Aziz of Misr, the great minister of Egypt. Case closed. As far as she was concerned, case closed. Until the Aziz of Egypt, as for me, no one can have me. No one. So she began to turn away all of the suitors. Until finally, even the Aziz, the minister of Egypt, heard about her. And he wanted her. Because now, you know, in those days, poetry was the social media. Poetry. Caravans would carry the poetry from land to land. And this was the poetry. This is the great poetry about this beautiful woman, this woman in the West, coming to the East, you know, relatively, about Zuleika. So by the time it reached him, it's like, ooh, this is like, I have to have her. I have to have her. So he asked for her hand. The Aziz of Misr, the minister. She immediately accepted. Immediately, without seeing him, without trying to understand who he was, right? She impulsively accepted the offer. All right? And she was married to him. Afterwards, she discovers this was not the man of her dreams. This was not. This was not the man that was in her dream. Worse than that, he was Anina. You know Anina? Impotent. He cannot have intimate relations with his wife. So she's with one of the most powerful, richest men of the time. So she just kind of goes inward. She becomes obsessed with perfumes and garments and, you know, the things rich people amuse themselves with. All right? Good food. She's just pacifying herself. No one knows her true state except Allah. No one. Okay? Now, at the same time, over in Palestine, right? Over in Palestine, Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam, Nabi Yaqub, the prophet Jacob, he has a bunch of kids. He has 10 sons from one wife, and he has 2 from the other wife. One of them is our master, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. And very early on, when he was just a young boy, he had dreams. He began to dream that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to him. And he tells his father, Nabi Yaqub, he tells him, who tells him, shh, don't tell that to anyone. Because he knows that his other sons will never accept that he is Nabi. He is the one. Right? You know, sometimes, you know, like it's, you know, even in our family sometimes it's like, there's an adab that we maintain. There's an adab. The oldest one has the most privilege because they become like the parent of the younger one. They have that. So it just, you're naturally like, okay, I got 10 older brothers. 10. Of course, they're thinking, okay, our father is a prophet. One of us is going to be the prophet. They're thinking that. But Allah, يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ. He does what He wants, how He wants. And He chose to place the nubuwwah where He chose. And that was with one of the younger brothers, Nabi Yusuf. So the brothers are watching the father. They're watching him. And they see that his heart is inclined towards Yusuf. So their hearts begin to fester. Fester with jealousy. And it festers. And it grows. And it festers. And it grows. Until they plan to commit murder. Murder. Think about this. These are the sons of a prophet. And they're not going to kill somebody randomly on the street. They're going to kill their own blood. You think you're free from that? You're not free from that. No one is free from it. It's just that Allah didn't place you in a situation where it had to rise up. Every human being has this potential. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He starts off the story. If you're paying attention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts off the story about the nafs of 3 people. Number 1, Zuleika, blindly following what she saw in her dream. Blindly following. Number 2, the Aziz. He's marrying out of ego. Ego. You know, rich people, they want the best of everything. They want the best car, they want the best house, they want the, you know, the biggest plane, they want the biggest hotels, they want the best of everything. So he wants this woman that he heard about through poetry. He has to have the best. Even though he knows he cannot carry out the responsibility of a husband to a wife. He knows that. So he's driven by his ego. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about the brothers of Nabi Yusuf who, you know, they are following their whims. Following their whims to commit murder. Alright? So what do? They finally go to their father. They keep telling their father, let Yusuf come with us. Let Yusuf come with us. Let Yusuf come with us. And Nabi Yusuf, he knows, you know, like they don't intend him any good. He knows it. He's Nabi. He's Nabi, right? He gets news. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows him things as they really are. And so they finally, so he gives them an excuse. He says, no, I'm afraid he'll be eaten by a wolf. I said, how is he going to be a wolf? Look at all of us. We're diesel. How? We're 10 of us. How is a wolf going to grab him? So finally they convince him. He lets Yusuf go. Alayhi salam, Nabi Yusuf. And they were going to kill him. But one of them, some of the Mufassirin, they say it was the oldest one. He said, no, let's not kill him. Let's throw him in the well. But their intention was to kill him. So they threw him in the well. When they come back to their father and say, they come back to their father crying. Right? And they present his shirt to Nabi Yaqub with fake blood. And this is what he says to them. قَالَ بَلْ. Like, no way. Right? سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. He tells them, no, this is your nafs that has, you know, you're trying to make a lie the truth. This is driven by your nafs. سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ أَمْرًا فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. As for me, I'm going to be patient. He tells them from the get-go, this is about your nafs. It's not as you're saying it is. But I have to be patient. And then I have to have a beautiful patience. And he has to have a beautiful patience because he can't have resentment living with his sons. He knows that he might not know all the details because that's his test. But he knows that what they're saying is not true. And so he's in a state of grief. But he still has to be, right? He still has to have husn al-akhlaq with them. He has to have good character with his sons, knowing they betrayed him. They betrayed him. All right? So, when the caravan comes, they bring up this beautiful boy. You know the thing about the beauty of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, the thing about it is, everyone could see something special about him. Everyone, they could see it. It made some people fall in love. It made some people hate. It made some people want to kill, right? Depending on what's in your nafs, that's what's being driven. And so, when they see him, they're like, oh, wow, we are going to get a high price in Egypt for this one. Now their nafs are involved. Now their nafs are involved in the transaction. Because they don't have a right to take a human being who may have fallen in the well, they don't know, may have fallen in the well, and immediately sell him into slavery. No. They're being driven by their nafs too. Same thing with him. Some of the stories say that the poetry preceded them. Before the caravan reached Egypt, everyone already knew that they had a beautiful, beautiful human being that would drive up the price. And so you have a Nabi on the slave market. A Nabi on the slave market. And he was, and who was the only one that had enough money to buy him? The Aziz of Misr. The Aziz. So he buys him, takes him home, and what does Zuleika see? Because Zuleika is in the house of the Aziz. Right? She sees Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, and she remembers. He is breathtakingly beautiful. Nabi Yusuf. So now she becomes more restless. She becomes more unhappy. All right? And less satisfied with the situation that she has with her husband. Slowly but surely, Nabi Yusuf, full bloom. The ulama, they say when he got there, he was an adolescent. So we can imagine he's between maybe the ages of 12, maybe 16. But you can still see, wow, what is this? Right? What is this? Beautiful. He finally reaches the age of maturity, right? Now all his muscles, full height, beautiful. She can no longer resist. So she comes up with a plan. The Aziz leaves the house. She locks all of the doors of the house and calls him to her. Come. Right? He rejects her. And as he's trying to escape, she grabs his shirt, tears his shirt. And as he's scrambling to get away, guess who he bumps into? The Aziz. The Aziz. His master. The one who is showing him, relatively kindness. Giving him food, clothing, shelter. Like this is a time where there's no welfare. You can't go and fill out an application and get a check every month. Get food stamps. So if you're a stranger in a land and someone doesn't take care of you, you got a big problem. You are SOL. You got a big problem. So whoever shows you kindness, if you have any ihsan, you're going to also show them kindness. You're going to return it. You're going to return the favor. So now he's running away from the wife of the Aziz. He's running away from her. And he runs right into the Aziz. And just think about a noble person. A noble. Will a noble person just snitch right away? Will a noble person say, hey man, she's out of pocket? She is tripping, man. He's not going to do that. And he doesn't do that. But what does she do? Because she does not have the ability to accept responsibility. She cannot accept the blame. She cannot accuse herself. She says to her husband, Allah said that she said, قالت ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا. What is the punishment for the person who wants evil for your family? She immediately accuses him. That's when he has to defend himself and say, it wasn't me. It was her. He has to defend himself. Now just think about it. If you were the Aziz and you saw this situation, who would you believe? How does a noble woman want a slave? How? It's unthinkable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sends divine intervention. Someone from her family, and some of the ulama, they say it was a young child, some of them even say it was an infant. And Allah mentions it in the Quran. Someone from her family says, well, if the shirt is torn from the front, then he's lying and she's telling the truth. But if it's torn from the back, right, he's telling the truth and she's lying. So the Aziz asked for the shirt. Right, this takes time to unfold. It doesn't happen right there on the spot. It's like, the whole household is in an uproar. What? He did what? She said what? What's going on? So it's spreading just in the household. And then finally just a young kid is like, man, come on, man, it's common sense. If it's torn from the front, it's this. If it's torn from the back, it's this. But he was inspired by Allah to say that. And then the Aziz comes to his senses. And he asks him to don't say anything. Right? But he does not hold her responsible. He goes to Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam and he says, please, overlook this. This is in the Quran. I'm just summarizing it. Because Abdullah's going to want me off the mic in a minute. I'm just summarizing it. It's in the Quran. That's what she says. This is what the Aziz says. Hey, just don't mention it. Like, just cover it up. Because his reputation is on the line. Right? His status in the society is on the line. He doesn't want this to come out. But guess what? It comes out anyway. We know how that works. Namima, tale carrying. He tells her, he said, she said. Now the whole city is like, what? A noble woman wants a slave? Man, this is unheard of. This cannot be happening. How can a noble woman give her whole heart to a slave? How can that happen? As soon as she hears that this is the gossip, she's like, all right, I got you. I got you. I'm going to show you. And that's what she does. Again, she wants vindication. She's not accepting responsibility. She's trying to excuse herself. She wants to make herself look good in front of these other people. She doesn't want them to blame her. But she's deserving of the blame. Right? And I'm saying this with respect. Because eventually she makes tawbah. You know what I mean? It's in the Quran too. Eventually she makes tawbah. So I'm saying it with respect to convey the lesson. To teach the lesson. Alright? In the beginning, she blames Nabi Yusuf. And then she blames the other women of the city. She's trying to excuse herself. She wants to put honor where there's no honor. Right? She cannot accept the blame. So, she invites them, all these noble women, in all their finery, right? Beautiful clothing, arriving probably on chariots, right? It's a beautiful Mediterranean environment. And she seats them in a beautiful environment. All right? She gives them fruit and the knives that cut the fruit. And when she sees that they're engaged, they're probably talking. She sees that. She tells Nabi Yusuf, now enter into them. Go out and show them you. He goes out. What do they say? As soon as they see him, they're no longer focused on cutting the fruit. They begin cutting their fingers. This is what Allah said. They see him. They're like, this is not a human being. This is an angel. Like, where did he come from? You know, because he was so beautiful. Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. He was so beautiful that when he went out in public, they used to make him wear a veil. Because sometimes men would see him and they would pass out. Like just faint. It was not lust. It was jamal. It was divine beauty. Because in the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created beauty, when he created it, he gave half of it to Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. Half of it. And the rest, he spread out amongst all of creation. So when someone sees that, whoa. And when they saw him, they were like, whoa. Let's pause for a second. Subtle point. If at that time, Zuleika had truly loved Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, she would never have wanted harm for him. Never. Love doesn't open the door to harm. She tried to get him jacked up with her husband. Now she's trying to get him jacked up with these women. And she makes a declaration. She tells the women that are there, now you see what happened to me. But guess what? If he doesn't do what I want him to do, he's going to prison. That's what she says. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what she says. In the Quran, that's what she says. He don't do what I tell him to do, he's going to prison. That's not love. If you truly have love for someone, you don't want harm for them. She would have taken all of the blame if she truly loved him. So we have to call it what it is. It's lust. She wants to satisfy all of her desires. She wants him to pay. She wants him to serve her. And she wants him to lose his righteousness in the process. That's what she wants. Right? She would have suspected her motives. She would have accepted responsibility. Love will make you honor someone. Love will make you respect someone. Love. She did not have love. She's trying to get something else. She's trying to get her thing off. She's trying to satisfy her thing. That's what this is going on. Carnal love, right? Carnal love. You know, we have women of the street. Every city has them. And the people that engage in that, they don't have no love. It's just carnal. They don't have no love for the person. One wants money, the other one just wants to get their thing off. That's it. All right? There's no love there. There's no respect. There's no, dignity involved. And at that moment, that's where she was. All right? The nafs always harms. Always. And this is the moral of the story, y'all. This is the moral of the story. Many times how you know that you are following your nafs is that someone is getting hurt in the process. Someone has gotten hurt in the process. That's how you know. All right? And in order to correct that situation, you have to first take responsibility and you have to say, Ana asif. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And it can be about money. It can be between siblings. It can be between parents and children. It can be, between a boss and an employee. You have to be able, number one, to suspect your nafs. You always have to stop and say, is it me? Am I wrong? Am I at fault here? Are they right? Everybody can't be wrong and you're the only one that's right. But if you're just rolling with the motives of the nafs, you can't see it. You only see your excellence, your right. Okay? That's the moral of the story. لَن تُنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, right? You will not approach righteousness. You will not reach righteousness. It's not going to happen until you are able to give up what you love. All right? It's not going to happen. The verse is specifically talking about money. But our ulama expand on it and say, this is applicable even to the nafs, because it's precious to us. The nafs, very precious. We don't want anything to hurt, anything. We don't want any harm. We don't want anything. We don't want nobody to look at us wrong. We don't want it to correct us. We don't want that. But you will not reach righteousness until you are able to give up that aspect of the nafs. You won't. All right. Zuleika is telling everybody she's going to continue with her evil plans. She's going to try to reach her evil conclusion. And if he doesn't submit, he's going to the slammer. Right? He's going to prison. All right? She's justifying herself. I'm only doing this because he's doing that. You see it. It's super clear, right? You can see, like, what's wrong with her? You have to take this story and apply it to yourself. Each and every one of us, we have to say, man, when did I do that? How does it show up in my life? How? How do I justify what I do that's wrong? Each and every one of us, we have to do that. All right? So, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam does the exact opposite. He takes the opportunity to turn to Allah. He says, Ya Allah, I would rather go to prison than to do what they're asking of me. You can imagine. Now all the women of the city, the noble women of the city, are chasing him. Some of y'all handsome dudes, y'all probably had that before, right? A whole bunch of dudes, a bunch of women chasing you. You don't know. Too many people calling your phone, right? Right? Imagine if it was a bunch of rich women who had means to send messages and servants and gifts and invitations. And imagine. And he's like, Ya Allah, put me in the dungeon. I don't want that. Ya Allah. You see, his nafs is not involved. His nafs is not involved. Her nafs are involved. And that's what happens when the nafs are involved. All right? So, many times, you think that when you're up, Allah is pleased with you. Everything's going your way. You have money, you have this, you have that. Everything's going your way. But sometimes, that comes when you actually fall. Sometimes you have to fall to receive the gifts properly. You have to be humbled. You have to be sat down. You have to be still. Sometimes it shows up as illness. Sometimes it shows up as prison. Sometimes it shows up as losing money, losing children, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has many, many ways of fixing us. Many, many ways. The key is, check yourself before you. Y'all listen to too much rap, man. Everybody knows the answer. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right? Okay. Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, he goes into prison because the Aziz comes to him. I'm sorry, the Aziz is the one that has him in prison, because the Aziz is like, man, this is getting out of hand. This is crazy. What's going on? You know what I mean? They have their spies and they have their informants coming and telling them, oh man, we saw Yusuf go to the water well and there was a woman waiting for him and there was a chariot over there. Like, it's just drama now. It's just drama. So he's like, no, he got to go. He got to go. And he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. But Allah granted him that. In prison, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the gift of Nubuwah. That's where it began to bloom. In prison. Nubuwah, prophethood. And he also gave him there the gift of dream interpretation. All right? That's what he gave them there. And that's what leads him, and I can't go into all of the details, right? Because we don't have enough time. But that's where someone from the king's, from the court of the king gets locked up, and he notices Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. He notices him. Nabi Yusuf interprets a dream for him. He goes back, he gets out of jail. He goes back to the king, but he forgets. Because Nabi Yusuf told him, hey, remind the king about me. And Allah says, Shaitan made him forget. In the Quran, Allah says, Shaitan made him forget. So Yusuf stayed in jail for some more years. He didn't do anything. He's in jail for years. Years. So now we know the king eventually has, eventually the king has a dream. Dreams are very important. There's another story. That's another lesson of this story. Dreams are very important. All right? Every human being has dreams. Whether they remember them or not, you know what I mean? Like, there's a whole angelic realm. And their only job is to bring you symbols. Sometimes they bring you symbols. You might see a cat in your dream and a cat does something and it needs interpretation. Or sometimes you just might see the event that's going to happen. Sometimes Allah shows you things from the past. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He shows you things from the future. Sometimes He shows you things right then and there the way they are. Right? Like, you'll fall asleep and you'll have a dream that, you was in your cousin's house, down in Menifee, and somebody dropped a jar. The jar dropped and broke. And then you go over to the house the next day, and they start telling you, yeah, the jar, so-and-so had the jar broke. And you're like, well, I saw that. Wallahi, it happens. Wallahi, it happens. Dream interpretation is very, very powerful. It gives you clear insight into yourself and into other people. It's very powerful. All right? But you have to pay attention. So the years go by, the winds have changed. The Aziz dies. Zuleika, she's nobody now. See, sometimes it has to happen. She's nobody. She no longer has access to the court like she did before, the king's court. Right? Probably like our time now, inflation, the prices have gone high. She don't live in the nice, beautiful house anymore. She doesn't have the beautiful chariot with the white horses. Everything has changed. Nabi Yusuf interprets the dream of the king, and the king knows it's true. It's like, hey, wait a minute, bring him to me. Bring him to me. And then the king asked him about, what was the thing with you and the women, man? What happened? So that he does his own investigation. He's a king. Think about it, right? Today we have background checks. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes they say, man, I saw you got arrested for something, right? What happened with that? You start explaining. They're like, no. Let's see the report. Let's see the report. That's what the king is doing. He brings all of those women to the court. Let's hear what you have to say. How do you explain yourself? And there was a statement made. And the beauty about this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not tell us who made the statement in the Quran. So the ulama are divided about it. Right? She confesses. Now, you see, she's broke. She doesn't have any status in society. She's probably gotten a little bit older. You know, in those age, by the time you reach 30, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. Right? She's probably gotten a little bit older. And, you know, now she's ready to confess. And she tells everything to the king. She said, no. He was innocent. You know, it was us. We did that. Yeah, we did that. Now she's ready to accept responsibility, to accept blame. Now just think about that for a second. Right? Just think about when you were young. Those of us, you know, we're a little bit older, right? Those of us, we got some hair on our face, whether it's black or white, right? You think back about how you got your sister in trouble when you were young, how you got your brother in trouble, how you stole something and let your brother take the fall for it, right? And then you recall it later and you're like, oh man, my bad. But at that point, you couldn't say my bad. You could not accept responsibility. So if you can accept responsibility now, it means that you have grown. But this is something that we all have to do. We have to look back and we have to say, my bad. And if it's involving a human being, you have to rectify that. You have to rectify that. So, she admits to everything. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَمَا أُبِرِّئُ النَّفْسِ إِنَّ النَّفْسَ الْأَمَّارَةَ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. Someone says this. We don't know who said it. But they say, I don't declare that I am innocent. Some of the ulama, and I'm talking about great ulama, they say this was Nabi Yusuf who said that. Some of the ulama, they say no, this was Zuleika who said that. And each one of them has their proofs. The lesson is, men and women have to be able to say this, no matter the circumstance. If it was Nabi Yusuf who said it, he said it so that his nafs wouldn't gloat. I have finally been justified. So he says, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. I'm not saying my nafs is free from blame. I'm not saying that. If it was Nabi Yusuf who said it. If it was Zuleika who said it, that's tawbah. She finally reached a point to where she could accept blame and she could rectify her situation. She entered into the ranks of the believers. Right? So there's a lesson either way. You see, it is unbefitting that a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would gloat. That's bad adab. With Allah is bad adab. To be like, I told you. This is very, very bad adab. And that's why some of the ulama say, those are words that would come from a Nabi. Though, you know, like, what else would he say? What else would he say? Because the ulama explain that when you say that, when you say, I told you so, when when you really, let me put it to you like this. You know, if somebody does something wrong to you, and then you see them fall, you see something bad happen to them, you say, Allah got him for me. Allah got him for me. Really? Who are you? Who are you? Right? Like what you're saying is, you're not saying Subhanallah, glory be to Allah. Allah is the most perfect. That's not what you're saying. You're saying Subhan nafsi, glory be to me that he would take this person to account because of me. You see? See how ugly it is? A prophet wouldn't do that. A Nabi, they wouldn't do that. And so, if it's Zuleika, she believes. She sees what she did that was wrong. Right? She admits her fault. She accepts blame. Right? She could have kept on with the excuses. She could have. I was oppressed. And then she kind of was. My needs weren't being fulfilled. She could have. She could have went on and on and on with the excuses. He's a Nabi. Look at him. I was captivated by him. No one can resist him. She could have gone on and on and on with the excuses. But if she did make that statement, she's coming to terms with, I'm to blame. I'm trying to rectify the situation. I'm trying to rectify the situation. All right? What happens with the brothers? Same. When they realize that the one that they sold into slavery is now the Aziz. He's the great minister of Egypt. He has all the, this is like the Secretary of State. How many of you have a passport? You have a passport, right? Without the Secretary of State's signature, you wouldn't have that passport. That's power. Right? All of the U.S. embassies across the world, the Secretary of State is responsible for that. Something goes wrong in Egypt, something goes wrong in Pakistan, the first one to know about it, the Secretary of State. That's power. That's the kind of power he has now. He has access to the treasury of Egypt, one of the greatest kingdoms of its time. And they've got to come into the court and they finally realize, this is Yusuf? Oh man, they done sold him into slavery. What would you be like? You did something really, really wrong to somebody, and then all of a sudden they have all this enormous power over you. You'd be like, oh man. What do they have to do? They finally have to come, because not only did they sell him into slavery, they lied to their father. Years have gone by under this lie. But they finally have to go back to their father and say, forgive us. We did wrong. We did wrong. We were wrong. They've got to go back and admit that. They have to accept that. Right? And Nabi Yaqub, as is the status of a Nabi, he says, I'm going to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you. Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, right? So now the winds have changed. Right? And we might have maybe 2 or 3 minutes before Abdullah comes back with the pizza. So I'm going to tell you the other winds that have changed. Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, he mentions in his book, Ihya Ulumuddin, that eventually Zuleika and Nabi Yusuf were married. And she had not been touched that whole time. Right? She had not been touched. She had never had intimacy with a man. Never. But the whole thing has switched. Imam Ghazali tells us that her repentance led her to be so intimate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he would call her in the morning for relations. But because of her occupation with her devotion to Allah, she would not end up going to him until that night. And when he would call her at night, because of her devotions, she wouldn't end up going into the morning. Right? I know what you're thinking. Oh, but the Sharia says, our Sharia says that. Right? That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is, this is, this is talking about intimacy. Intimacy, uns, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Uns. Intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam would respect. That he would respect. Right? So, that was my, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. We cannot, ya ibadullah, we cannot pretend like we are innocent. We cannot pretend that we are, above blame. Even when you have the upper hand on someone. No, I caught you. No, I know you did that. So what? You're not free from blame either. There's something you have that somebody could check you about too. Or you're not a human being. You're not a human being. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.